You're listening to the Beer Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. Tune in every Wednesday night at 6:30 Pacific for a dose of beer and brewing banter with your hosts, Ben Holm and Andrew Ziegler.
A 24-pack of wit and wisdom in the Pacific Northwest, because it's always beer 30 on The Beer Craft.
Welcome back to the Beer Craft, the podcast where hops and humor collide. I'm Ben, and I'm here to crack open another topic that's as bold as it is refreshing.
Oh yeah, and I'm Andrew. This week we're diving headfirst into the world of IPAs, the history, the hops, and of course, the coast-to-coast rivalry that keeps craft beer fun and fans are buzzing.
From the myth and legend of the IPA's origins to the bitter brilliance of the West Coast IPAs and the hazy allure of the East Coast cousins, we're breaking it all down.
So whether you're into crisp, piney flavors or juicy tropical vibes, grab your favorite IPA or two. Let's hop into it.
Lieutenant Dickens arrived on the scene of a reported MEA, or otherwise known as a mead eruption accident. Surely SBU dispatcher had the address wrong as he pulled into the driveway of his own home. In the home brewing system, fermentation problems are considered particularly grievous. In Burlington, the dedicated brewers who investigate these problem ferments are members of an elite squad known as the Special Brewers Unit. These were their stories presented by Northwest Brewers Supply.
Welcome back to the Beer Craft. It's another Wednesday here in the studio. This one's a little bit different. I'm staring at the sun. Yeah, the sun's still out today because I've got some scheduling conflicts, and so our normal 6:30 time slot has to be, well, what is it? It's just past 12:30 here in the studio.
We're having lunch beers.
We're going to drink beer for lunch. That's a terrible problem to have, I recognize. Professional beer drinking as a full-time occupation is a pretty good gig, I got to tell you, folks. Andrew, good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you, Ben.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
How you been, man?
Oh, this week was another good week. Oh, I had a good beer drinking weekend. Oh, yeah. Both days, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember most of it?
I do.
That's a good sign.
I was able to go to Structures Brewing, and I brought back one of our beers for Beer 30.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Structures, they're at the, there where Chuck and I used to be up there in Bellingham.
Yep, and they call that Struck-a-Nut.
Struck-a-Nut.
Struck-a-Nut, yep.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, they're going to remodel their other main location.
Okay.
Their first location. They'll be remodeling that at the end of the month. So you can only go to Struck-a-Nut for a while. So I'm curious because that's where Chuck-a-Nut used to brew.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if they're going to move their equipment into there. Open up their downtown tap room.
It's big enough.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. So they're remodeling the other location, their original location.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Remodeling the original.
Well, that's fun. Well, you guys have fun up there in Bellingham. Go check them out, folks. Structured Brewing, I've had a couple of their beers. I've not got to get up there and sit in either of the tap rooms.
Have you ever had this one, the Fuzz?
I don't think I've had the Fuzz.
It's the juicy.
Is that what we're drinking today?
Yes,
I have a
sir.
little East Coast representation on the West Coast.
All right.
I brought in another beer, Boundary Bay, another Bellingham classic.
A classic Northwest IPA?
Yeah. The original Northwest original IPA. Boundary Bay, I don't know if you heard, they're closing next January.
I heard, yes. Sad.
Yeah, it is.
Sad news.
I'm bummed about that one. This great location, cool place. I really like it there.
Yeah.
I do host. Maybe somebody out there will throw together enough coin to buy the building and brewery and keep it up.
Well, I heard they just weren't renewing the lease for them.
I think they own the building.
Yeah.
So I think it's
just retiring.
Retirement. Yeah, retirement.
Just
they've been in it. Yep. They've been at it for
a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
I can't remember the date. I looked it up the other day, and they've been at it for a hot minute.
Right.
Yeah.
All
Very
right.
good beers. I'm excited.
What are we
for
going to drink first?
Well, it is that time again because it's your favorite part of the show, my favorite part of the show, the part where we crack open a cold one, sip and savor while we chat about what's in our glasses. That's right, folks. It's
Beer 30.
Yeah, I think we should start with the West Coast.
West Coast.
Now, the Best Coast. I mean,
why would you start out with that one?
I think I guess it comes down to the origin story, right? The West Coast IPA made the IPA the king that it is today.
It is.
The East Coast, I'm not here to knock on East Coast varieties. That's not what we're about. Now, I guess it could be said, if we're going from like a flavor and tasting order, Often we might start with the East Coast, the East Coast version. They're not as bitter.
Right.
You
so
make
we want to start out with
it is a compelling argument.
Lower IBUs.
Let's see. Let's see it. Is it on the can? Do we have an IBU?
It is not on the can.
You've had this beer. It's
I have,
and so this is not a bitter example. A very bitter example.
This is the Northwest Boundary Bay Northwest.
That's a bitter beer.
It's an 82 IBU.
It's a good start.
So if we start with this one, we're not going to taste that one.
You present a compelling argument. All right, we're gonna change this up. We're gonna start with the hazy from Structures. Gonna pour a little beer in the studio on this bright, shiny afternoon. Still cold outside, just like the beer.
Yep.
Well, that qualifies as a hazy. I can't see a thing through that.
It's brewed with favorite blend of malts and oats, and it is double dry hopped with El Dorado and Citra. Showcasing aromas is like peach sherbet, lychee, and some white grape.
Lychee, that's a fun flavor.
Yeah, cheers.
Also known as mambutan, funny little fruit. Oh, that does smell really good. Dang.
A lunch beer, yeah. Very tasty. What do you think of it?
That's pretty good. It does have some bitterness.
It does.
It is not. It is not one of these 3 IBU hazy IPAs.
No.
Which I like. I prefer my IPAs bitter.
Yes.
That's a thing for
me.
me.
They need to have some of that bitter to go with the higher alcohol, because the IBUs, ABVs higher.
Snap a picture for you guys at home. It's a tasty beer.
Yeah, it's very good.
That El Dorado.
Very well done.
Well, that El Dorado is a nice hop. I've used that one several times. I think that one actually is in our Sacred Cow IPA at the shop.
Yeah.
The #1 selling beer.
I think
It's freaking tasty.
I think this one's one of my favorite hazy juicies.
That's a solid beer.
Yep.
I will enjoy the heck out of that one.
And you can get it in 4-packs at the brewery.
That's a tall boy.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Kind of hard to read the label. Can it's a blue on blue kind of thing.
Yeah,
That's cool.
that IBU might be in that can somewhere.
Yeah.
You need a light,
magnifying glass.
You need a light and magnifier.
Alcohol by volume 7.2%.
Good,
well,
right
that's
on
a
there.
perfect lunch beer. I'm only drinking half of it, so.
I say that's a perfect beer. 7.2.
7.2 is a good.
Yes.
We're gonna call that a good start. Good start.
Great.
So you up drinking beer in Bellingham, huh?
I was up drinking,
Nice.
and you know, one of my favorite thing is to get the double burger up there. That's Struckenut.
Oh,
You got to go to Struckenut where they cook the food.
all right.
It's like I don't know what they call it, trailer double or something. It's
a good burger.
double smash burger. Yeah.
Oh man,
really,
I love
really
smash
good.
burgers.
Really good.
I love.
And then I'm
love
sitting
those.
next to this a Canadian guy, Matt. Halo out there, Canadian guy. I can't remember your name. It's Struckenut, but I know he was getting away from the Taylor Swift concert, so he was down there. So I was chatting.
Oh, yeah.
I was chatting some beer. So I
cool.
I showed the beer podcast to him.
Oh, nice.
So hopefully he's listening.
Wow, right on, dude.
Who you got the chicken? I'm promoting Struckenut right now.
Yeah,
he got
do
the
it,
chicken
yeah.
sandwich. Oh my god, that looks good. I'm getting that one next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it like a grilled chicken or fried chicken?
Fried chicken sandwich.
Yes, please.
Juicy. Oh my gosh. So
man.
I'll probably go up there in another week.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Let me know. I'll
before
have to get up.
Christmas.
I'll have to get up there. Got some time off coming up. Might have to sneak away from my winterizing projects.
Right on.
And go drink beer and eat a hell of a burger. Smash burgers are fantastic, though. I got to bring it back to smash burgers. I've got a large cast iron flat top that fits on my stove, and oh boy, I love making smash burgers. I kind of max out the vent system in the kitchen.
Yep.
But man, they're really good. I was doing the Oklahoma City fried onion smash
Fried
burger.
onions, diced.
Thinly sliced onion smashed into the burger on the top.
Yeah. Then flipped.
And then flipped. Yeah,
then
they
flipped.
cook really, really
All
quick.
right, so
top with
you
American
put it
cheese.
you get it on the flat top.
So the recipe, full disclosure,
Then
the recipe comes from George Motes on YouTube. He is the burger scholar. If you've not seen him on there, check him out. George Motes, he's a burger nerd. I love him. He made this burger really popular. It's a 3-ounce serving of beef. It's balled up with a disher. It's a 4-ounce disher or ice cream scoop. Leveled off will be 3 ounces.
No onions in there though.
No onions yet.
Okay.
So it's only 4 ingredients. So you got the beef at 3 ounces, and that's an 80-20 burger grind. So chuck, prime rib, and good stuff.
Now.
Yeah. That goes on the flat top. Healthy sprinkling of salt, and then a pile of super thin sliced onion, and you're gonna smash that within 30 seconds. Smash all that onion down into that burger, until and you're gonna cook it on one side.
Right now.
Yeah. Cook it down on one side. When you start seeing kind of the juices bubble up, it's time to flip. Top with American cheese and a plain, and then you're gonna put your plain bun right on it. Does not need mustard. Doesn't need mayo. Doesn't need ketchup. Doesn't need anything.
Do you put the bottom bun on or the top?
You're gonna put the top down bun first, and then you're gonna put the bottom bun on top of that.
On top of the top
to warm
bun.
up. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And that allows you, and so you're going to want to scoop all the onions that's squishing out the sides. You're going to get those underneath the patty, and they're going to cook down in there for a couple minutes till the cheese is all ooey gooey melty. But then you get to use the bun as sort of a handle. You get your spatula under there, and you pick it up, and you can put the bun underneath it and kind of pinch it, slide it off of the spatula, and shove the whole thing in your mouth. You'll want to make more of them. My kid said to me as soon as she
reminds me of sliders from the 80s.
Yeah, as soon as my youngest took a bite, he's like, "Dad, you need to make this more often." My wife, right around the corner, was say, "Honey, can we do this again next week? I want 2 of them." So you want a double burger? I said, "No, I want 2 burgers. That's it." She got what she wanted. Very, very excellent burger.
Yum. We're gonna have to have a
now it's a burger show.
Yeah, beer and burger show.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Not a bad topic. Not a bad topic. I got to go down to went down to Arlington on Sunday. Had the holiday party for the Norwalk Homebrewers Guild, and we pair up with the Stilly Mashers Homebrew Club from down in Arlington.
Okay.
So set up, had a potluck dinner and beers to share, and we did like a white elephant beer exchange.
Right.
I ended up with an Alsop Rose Saison, aged Saison. I'm excited about that.
You know I like Saison.
I know you do. I get your name on it, man. It's hanging out for maybe we'll do a Saison show coming up. Oh man, I gotta drink more of this hazy. I'm falling behind. My mouth is getting dry.
Super good.
But it was a good time. It was kind of the end of the year bash for the homebrew clubs.
Yep.
As I start back up in January with regular meetings, and I'll be taking over again as president of Norwalk.
Oh, you're the president now.
Yeah, one more term. I think this will be my
and the meetings are on Sundays.
Norwalk meets the second Sunday of the month at 2 p.m. at Northwest Brewers Supply.
I've recorded the Hawks game before, so maybe I could this time.
You can manage. Yeah. There's important things out there too, other than football. It's called beer. Beer is why we do a show here, folks, because it's really, really important. We got a second beer, don't we? We got that West Coast one.
We got that Boundary Bay.
Good old Boundary Bay.
Yeah, let's give it a comparison. Sounds good.
And that's the moneymaker right there.
Okay, so you had 2 pint glasses. I had 2 curvy pint glasses. I wonder if it makes a difference for real.
We would have to do some sort of volume testing on that.
We should.
There you go.
We can't do that at lunch.
You can have that big one. I got to drive. I'll have 2 blocks to the shop.
Good carbonation level.
Yeah. Nice golden kind of orange spectrum.
Yep.
Over that one, we'll get
I can't really see through my glass. IPL lager glass from Pyramid. It's got writing all over it, but it looks good.
It's a good looking beer. Taste that. Yeah, it's a classic West Coast.
Low hop aroma.
Yeah.
Not much.
But those piney resiny, a lot of sea hops in that.
Sharp.
Sharp bitterness.
Yeah.
That's where I live, man.
And it cuts, and it's good, and it's gone.
Yeah, leaves you wanting more.
Yeah.
They both really do. Crazily, there's miles between these two beers. It's I think it's kind of weird they call them IPAs.
Well, that's what we're going to get into.
We sure are.
Why do we call them IPAs?
Well, kind of that, the IPA, right now it is the most popular beer style in craft. It is 40% of the craft market. It has a dominant marketing position as well. I mean, if you think about every craft beer ad, they're usually pimping the IPA.
Every brewery has a flagship IPA.
Or 4.
Yeah. Well, some have like just 6 IPAs that they make.
Yeah. There's definitely some outfits that are focused on the IPA.
Yep.
And at 40% of the market, you can kind of see why. It's kind of labeled as the third style of beer. You got regular, you got light beer, and you got IPA. Never mind, there are 100 other styles to choose from. But all of the beer trends.
100 other IPA styles?
100 other beer styles.
Got it. I was,
other than IPA.
Yeah. I was kind of commenting on how many IPAs there are out there.
So
many.
That's a big chunk of the marketplace. But that IPA is an India Pale Ale. It's kind of, we all grew up with this notion that the IPA was engineered, this high hop bitterness, to stay fresh on a long voyage to India, in the English colonies, and I think most of that comes from just marketing, or fable and legend, because it's not actually true. I mean, there is a reason we have India was.
Well, it happened.
They did ship beer over there, absolutely.
I mean, it happened the way they kind of talk about it.
So it goes back to there's a brewery in England, Hughes Brewery. Got it here in my notes here. I'll confirm in a second. But they had strong ties to the East India Company.
Yep. So I want to talk about the history behind this.
Yeah.
The reasoning behind why they did this beer, and when it started, and why it is what it is today.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, but we need to support our sponsor, because, sorry folks, Beer 30's over. It's time for a history lesson.
But it's a delicious history lesson.
I have a little bit of beer left.
So stay tuned. We'll come right back with the IPA, everything you want to know.
History of IPA.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Beer 30. Thank you for joining us on Beer 30.
In the homebrewing system, one question is asked more than any other. In Burlington, the dedicated brewers who answer this question are members of an elite squad known as the Special Brewers Unit. These are their stories.
Mazda Man, why homebrew your own beer?
Homebrew for the finest, most personalized beer. Control every ingredient and flavor. It's easy and satisfying with Northwest Brewer Supply.
Brew smart, brew safe, brew your best with Northwest Brewer Supply.
Welcome back to the Beer Craft. Today we're all about the IPA. It's a big player in the game. We talked about that earlier. But to really get a sense of where this beer comes from, you got to go back in time. So the beer started coming out in about 1750.
Right. And we have to remember that Reinheitsgebot was 1560.
We're not talking about
So between the purity law and this time, it's been quite a while that we've been brewing beers.
It's been a hot minute. Yeah. And this is, it's still got good cereal grains, hops.
Yeah, I'm brewing a great pale ale. I'm brewing a great pale ale, and people
to understand
the other side of the world want it.
To understand the history of IPA, you have to look at pale ales in general. In the beginning, all beers were brown, and it wasn't until the 1700s that I think it was Thomas Wheeler invented a coke-fired kiln, similar to like a coffee roaster, for kilning it, for drying out the grains, and that revolution allowed brewers to have a pale malt for the first time in history.
Lighter malt without it being scorched.
Exactly. The direct fire heat gave it all malts a smoke. All beer mostly had a smoky flavor and a dark brown appearance, and you had to use more of it.
Rausch beers.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah.
No wonder IPA is so popular now.
But the blonde beer, man, that was something never before seen. So the pale ale predates your Pilsner, all your Kolsch, all of your blonde beer styles come from the pale ale. And the IPA is just the bigger brother. It's got a higher ABV. It's got a higher hop bitterness.
Yep.
But in this category, you've also got, your pales, you've also got your blonde ales, your ESBs, your milds and bitters in the UK as well, all share a genetic backbone in terms of construction of the beer. So 1750 comes around, Hogston Brewery, Bow Brewery, they have a strong relationship with the East India Company, who had a trade route monopoly, and they had a monopoly on that partnership, and they started sending beer to India, and they were sending like 9,000 barrels of this stuff, which in 1750 is a not insignificant amount of beer. Those early beers had a gravity of about 1070, and roughly 70 IBUs, and were 100% pale malt. So you're looking at a pale malt probably in the color range of about 3.5 SRM. So they were blonde.
Yep.
And heavy hopping. Now, we had known for years hops have a preservative quality, and that combined with oak has another preservative quality. So those two factors allowed those beers to make the trip. The early IPAs had a higher attenuation as well. So the higher alcohol content of those beers also lended them. Yeah, without a bunch of extra sugars in there, they were combating spoilage bacteria by starving them of resources.
Right. Now the beer arrived, but I mean, imagine the carbonation level. You know, everybody's used to drinking cask beers.
Oh yeah.
Right. But there would be zero. There would be no carbonation in these.
No,
beers.
these would probably be flat.
Yep.
But you get the bitterness, and you get a lot of booze in 1070. That's a pretty big beer.
Yes.
You know, that's going to be 8%.
They're shipping 9,000 barrels a year. I mean, people want it.
Yeah.
Even if it's flat.
So all that. So this Bow Brewery, they would have a dominant position in the IPA marketplace.
Yes.
And it wasn't until like 1820 that the brewers in Burton-on-Trent. Now these guys, that water system out in Burton-on-Trent, that's a famous one. It's got a high calcium, high sulfate ratio. Remember talking about those on the water show a couple weeks ago. Those breweries were able to produce a excellent IPA to compete with the Bow Brewery's dominance.
Well, I heard a little bit of Bow Brewery after having that dominance for so long. They were kind of bullying, maybe unscrupulous business practices, which gave the India Trading Company opportunity to have other beers come from other people. That's where
they got a little greedy with their trading partners.
The Burton years come.
That soured the relationship with the East India Company, who were able then to switch to these Burton
three others,
Alsop, Bass, and Salt Brewery. Kind of refined that style.
Yeah,
they did things a little bit differently. They were lower ABV. It's about 6 to 7%. Still in that 70 IBU range, but highly carbonated. So things had progressed. By 1820, they had a higher, more champagne-like finish.
Yep.
So able to maintain that, and that really set the state. They ended up producing some like 20,000 barrels shipping to India during those years.
Wow.
So they had doubled what Bow Brewery had been able to do.
Right.
100 years earlier.
And they're shipping to the English colonies.
Right.
In India and the Caribbean. So yeah, we it's just because they're shipping it to India. We're not shipping it to like, hey, we're gonna ship all our beer to India and get these people drunk. You know?
Right. So we were shipping to India, but the India Pale Ale was really about that, the trade route,
Yep.
not necessarily the ultimate destination.
Where it went.
East India Company was, the Caribbean was,
Well, maybe then is this India Pale Ale based on East India Trade Company with their name? Did they gain favor, to ship their beer?
Probably had a little bit of marketing influence based on that sort of information and sort of the IPA name stuck.
That kind of put a different thought in my head right there.
So much of these things are marketing driven.
Right.
Um,
I'm calling my beer your trade route, or similar to your trade route. You're gonna now double your production.
Yeah, that's a lot of beer. It's a lot of beer in 1820. So that would last until like the 1900s. So that's going to take us up to, now we get into like World War I through World War II, even into the modern era in the 80s. Some of that marketing influence, that bitter, instead of pale being the marketing buzzword, a lot of English breweries adopted they just call it bitter. You could go to the UK today and order a bitter, and you're going to get a pale, bitter beer. And that shift sort of takes place in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Those war years were a dramatic economic impact. I mean, let's just say two of the bloodiest battle scenes in the history of the world take place during those years. And so economically, things got a little rougher, and the IPA sort of even died out a little bit. Just the cost of doing business.
Right.
Making a strong beer with a lot of a lot
the
of expensive ingredients.
The monopoly on the trade routes probably fell.
Folded, yeah.
Yeah.
East India Company's gone sauce.
Gone. So no more distribution.
Yeah.
Other ones took over, bringing beer. We had then everybody coming to North America.
Yeah. Every war, closing every border
Yep.
during conflict. Kind of a rough spot for
Very
for
hard.
beer in general. It almost didn't, it practically didn't survive.
It didn't. Now, how did we get back to there? Who
Well,
was it?
That brings us to the Americas. The style is sort of reborn in the early 80s.
Yeah.
With U.S. brewery, kind of the birth of craft beer. Of course, we called it microbrewing.
Yep. And they went back to these old recipes to find out what they were doing way back when.
Yeah. And they borrowed the name IPA, brewed similar beers, and have been teaching the American drinker to enjoy a bitter beer ever since.
Yep. Higher hop. It's turned out wonderful.
So kind of those
40% of the market now, right?
Yeah, it's a ton. It's a ton.
mean-
You would get Anchor Liberty Ale, Sierra Nevada Celebration Ale, Grant's IPA. All these beers are sort of born. The pale ale even makes a comeback. Hales Ales was the first pale ale in Washington State.
Red, white, and blue, baby.
Oh yeah, that was a fantastic beer. America's love affair with hops is sort of born in the 80s and has been ever increasing
Roaring,
since.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. If we're starting at 70 IBUs back in the 80s, we would start to see 100 IBU beers pretty regularly through the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
Those were very different beers than the IPAs we're drinking today. A lot of crystal malt in those beers. So they all had some a sweetness to balance that 100 IBUs, right? Because sugar and bitterness is
and the alcohol level.
Yeah. Right. So they were trying to balance those beers, but I remember drinking those, and if you drank a lot of them, and I usually did, almost had like a coating on the inside of my mouth.
North Sound 101.
The 101 beer. Yeah. I just talked to Kurt about that beer the other day. It's 101 IBUs, even though you can only taste
double IPA.
Yeah, your
101
double
IBUs.
IPAs, triple IPAs.
It's like 9, maybe 9.5%.
Yeah, 10.1%.
10.1.
The 101 is named the 101 because it was 101 IBUs on paper. It was 10.1.
Oh, very
and
cool.
some of the economics of that beer also cost $101. Like they looked at a spreadsheet, it has like, oh, it costs $101 an ops on this thing.
Where?
You know, at North Sound Brewery. So
There
it
you go.
became the 101.
Yeah.
Quite by accident, actually. Yeah, so IPA revolution, you know, then I started drinking, you know, back in my day, I started drinking pale ales, and I find Stone Brewing IPA, and then the Arrogant Bastard.
Arrogant Bastard.
Actually, I had the Arrogant Bastard before their IPA because it had a better name. I like the gargoyle on the can. I still do. I still think it's pretty cool. Those were some of the early IPA ventures for me. Did you have some early favorites in that lineup?
You know, I don't remember.
So many beers and so many hangovers.
I mean, what were we talking in the 90s, late 90s?
Yeah. Yeah. What was I drinking? I was drinking all sorts of weird stuff.
Anything
I could find.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Red Hook, Windmere's, anything from the Northwest.
Yeah, but then so then we started like we started doing other styles with the IPA. We started branching out, and so, here we go. Some of the marketplace or marketing dominance. You start seeing black IPAs and red IPAs,
Yes.
double IPAs and triple
IPAs.
IPAs.
Rye IPAs.
Yeah, you name it. You know, they have white IPAs
Yeah.
and
White
winter IPAs and specialty. You know, all sorts of fun stuff.
Pretty much just a hopped up version of a style.
Right. Yeah. You know, that was kind of an American thing. If there's a classic style, if we add more hops to it, poof, it's a beer.
It's an
We're
IPA.
gonna make
I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it the Saison IPA.
Yeah.
What? Okay. No, that's cool. Whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
Don't mind.
there's.
I could be a stickler on it, you know, and say, you know, I just don't call it that because
What kind of?
I can't. You know, if I am like that, I stick to Ryan Heiskebo-ish. You know, like style. You know, style centric.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's
I mean,
hard.
style. I mean, at the end of the day, style is a suggestion.
Yeah.
But
You know, if I put on my beer judge hat, then I can start, you know, talking like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but in general, I'm okay with a red IPA.
yeah,
You know,
they're fun.
I'm okay
I like
with
the
that.
black IPA, but it did start to feel kind of ridiculous. Like every new beer was some other version of an IPA.
Yep.
And I think then we get into, Heady Topper comes out by the Alchemist Brewing out of Vermont. And I probably told this story before, but I remember seeing a video with John Kimmich, the owner of Alchemy, and he's introducing the Heady Topper to, I think it was like the National Homebrew Convention, and he's doing a panel discussion, and he's introducing that beer, and he's passing them out, and he's telling everybody to drink it out of the can. Don't pour it in a glass. You'll lose the aromas, and just smell this beer. I remember that kind of felt like, well, that sounds like bullshit to me. Because I remember Jim Cook of Boston Beer came out like the year before, and he designed the ultimate IPA glass that would focus the aromas right up your nose.
Right.
And so that's
a
Boston
Boston lager
beer.
glass.
Yeah. It's
Boston
got
beer
it's like a
coated
tulip glass with a thick, kind of
It's kind of like a pint glass with a bubble.
with a bubbly base on it, kind of like a stack of tires looking.
Yeah,
It's like the
something.
Michelin Man's leg or something. But it also had like micro etching inside the glass that would cause gases to escape. And the tulip shape would focus all the aromas up your nose. Fantastic. I've got a couple of them myself. So I've got Boston Beer going, this is the ultimate beer glass for IPAs. And then Kimmich saying, don't pour it in a glass.
Right. Drink it right out of the can.
And I think it was, because it was hazy. Like the beer looked opaque, and the world wasn't quite ready for that. Yeah.
Maybe that little hole in the beer can, concentrated the aromas as well.
Perhaps. It always, when I saw that video, it struck me as like, oh, that sounds, that's dubious. That's a dubious claim at best.
But maybe you're right. Maybe it was hazy and nobody was ready.
As a home brewer and, watching the beer scene through the 2000s, man, we were all obsessed about clear beer.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you look at the BJCP style guidelines for IPA, it'll say some haze, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's almost if you're dry hopping a beer, it's really hard to keep it clear.
You got to put some clearing agent in.
Yeah. And so a little bit of haze in the finish is okay according to the style guidelines.
Yep.
You know, you're not going to get dinged for that in a competition for those
I think a
categories.
little haze in the pale ale
Yeah.
also is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of your dry hopped beers, some haze is okay. But I remember being, as a brewer, like obsessed with clarity. And then these hazy things come out. And, we've also had like a glut of new marketing for IPAs. And I always just thought, man, does IPA need a leg up in the marketing platform? Do they need help marketing their beers or something? Because
Not now.
yeah, these hazy IPAs, and I get a little style. What's the word? I get I get a little snobby about the beer style, especially with the hazy IPAs, because so many of the early examples were like 20 IBUs or 10 IBUs.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that next.
Well, then maybe we should take a break and then come on back and talk about that sort
Well,
of
let's
stuff.
do that then.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, folks, on our first segment on our history lesson of IPA and where we are today with that, folks. So, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back after love for our sponsor.
Attention! Vacation's over, and from now on, you will brew when you please, and the first and last words out of your little brewer's mouth will be, I need a beer. Capiche?
Sir, yes, sir.
If you ladies leave my store, if you survive my special brewers unit training, you will be a home brewer. You will be a minister of beer, ever praying for more beer. Do I make myself clear?
Sir, yes, sir.
Learn to brew with Northwest Brewer Supply. Classes are available today at nwbrewers.com.
Welcome back. We are breaking down, in this segment, we're breaking down that East Coast versus West Coast IPA.
Oh, we got a rivalry going.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah.
It's up there with the Packers and the Saints.
There we go.
Or the Packers and the
How
not
about
the Saints,
Packers and the Seahawks?
the Vikings and
no,
the Packers.
No,
That's like
wait a minute. That's like totally
we
East
can do it-
Coast.
Okay, so West
you
Coast
first
would be
go
like
East Coast,
Seahawks,
South.
San Francisco, right? Like
That's
49ers.
That's both West Coast.
Yeah. So West Coast, you got the rivalries.
Seahawks, Green Bay Packers is a great East Coast
That's
West
a good
Coast
East
rivalry.
versus West. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with
They're playing on
with
Sunday.
that one controversy was it
the
Tyler Lockett's first
It was
season?
the infamous catch.
Yeah,
I was there. I was at that game.
Were you?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I might have been too.
It was insane. I'm in the third tier looking down at that catch right in front of my face. I mean, 300 yards away. And
300 yards down.
300 straight down. Man, it was, you couldn't see shit.
No, you
that
see them
happened
just
so
like-
fucking fast. Yeah.
Right, and then you have to watch it on the
yeah,
on the
it
replay.
was an hour before I got to find
I
the,
love
get
going to
my car.
games. I had season tickets before a couple years. I love going to games, but man,
Yeah.
you can't if you have 300 level seats, you can't see anything. They're like little stick figures down there, tiny.
But the energy's cool. I mean,
Oh God, the energy's amazing.
my wife's grandfather had season tickets for years, and we always sat in his seat,
Yeah.
so I knew everybody in the whole row, and it was always
Yep.
a good time to
Yeah.
know their kid, got
I
to
had
hear
to-
about their kids being born. And
I had to
stuff.
let mine go and under financial.
Yeah, Papa,
Instability.
he let his he got Alzheimer's, so he wasn't buying season tickets anymore.
Yeah. So a rivalry between the West Coast and the East Coast IPAs. Now, IPAs, remember, originated for the revival of this style on the West Coast.
Definitely, the Pacific seaboard here was the
leg up.
birthplace. In California, Stone Brewing, Russian River Brewing, up here
Russian
in
River, Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder.
Oh
God,
my word!
I've had that beer several times.
Me-
That's a really good.
me too.
It's a
It's-
good beer. It's a
it's
really
hobby.
good beer.
It's like one of a very, very well-known, very popular beers. One of the most popular beers that you can't get.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. But for years, it wasn't available in Washington. It's now available in Washington again.
Yeah.
But for years, they pulled the plug on
Yep.
that. They
It
were
was
selling,
available here, and then they pulled it back because it was so popular.
Yeah, they could sell 100% of that beer right over their own counter. No distribution necessary.
And make the money on
Oh
it.
man, they made the money on that beer.
Yep.
I've seen pictures of the release days for Pliny the Elder, and wrapped around the corner.
Gosh, amazing.
Unbelievable.
Great IPA. I mean, it's got an amazing dry hopping schedule, like 3 different times, I think, or 4.
It's got a lot of them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're huge.
It's crazy.
Fantastic beers. Sort of the typical for the West Coast IPA in its birth. The hops were the 4 C's, right? Cascade, Centennial, Chinook, Columbus. But then you start seeing Amarillo. Citra hit the scene, and that kind of blew things up as well. Citra would go on to be the #1 grown hop. Took the spot from Cascade.
From Cascade,
It held it for 20 years as the #1 grown.
Well, it was more specialty.
Oh yeah.
It was more specialty, way more piney and way more bitter.
Well, the Citra, man, I remember the early versions being heavily tangerine flavored. Really fantastic. And then the yeast made a big part of that. The IPA scene is dominated by White Yeast 1056 or the Chico strain, or that's White Labs, WLP01. Everybody's got that strain, that Chico strain,
Right, yep.
made so popular by Sierra Nevada in Chico, California. Clean yeast, clean fermenting ale yeast, so not a lot of ester profile, not a lot of flavor
Not a lot of
development.
fruity.
Nope.
Not fruity.
Nope. I mean, the English varieties, they would have had a fruitier finish
Right.
with the English
Yes.
yeast.
Did we talk about the malt bill yet?
Malt bills, you're going to see in the early 90s a lot of pale malt, but then also that crystal
Also
malt.
crystals.
Yeah, crystal 40, crystal
Kind of
50,
gotten
crystal
away.
60.
Kind of gotten away from that.
Yeah.
But there's still some in it. There's still some to give
Some.
them light. Like here, like the Boundary Bay.
Gonna
So
have
the
some.
Boundary Bay's got a little bit of
Yeah.
of crystal.
That's a classic recipe.
compared to the structures.
Structures probably doesn't have any.
Yeah, it's all pale.
A little bit of crystal malt. The modern interpretations of the style for West Coast IPA don't have, they're 100% pale malt beers. They want them as blonde as they can get them these days because everybody wants blonde beer.
Light
again.
beer,
Yeah.
light looking.
Yep, light looking beer. Right, they're kind of phobic
perception.
about. A little phobic about dark beers or anything with color.
So the East Coast IPAs, then I think they incorporated more of the darker malts, more of the crystals.
They definitely had some examples that had those
Sweet-
orange,
little
little sweetness.
Yep.
And kind of those orange, looking like an orange juice, and when you pour it out, kind of that opaque orange color was very, very popular.
Before they went to the juice and the haze, the East Coasts were just the darker, sweeter IPAs.
Oh yeah.
This
Some
is
of those
before,
examples, yeah,
like before
before Heady
the
Topper.
juices
Yeah.
and the hazies. Yeah. It was the difference between the East Coast, West Coast was that sweeter. It was still bitter. Goose Island.
yeah.
IPA.
Yeah.
It's a little bit darker. It's got a little bit more specialty malt. It might even be a little higher in alcohol, a little higher ABV.
Then the West Coast
Yep.
ones.
And maybe even a little higher, just a tiny higher IBU.
Remember, they were definitely sweeter.
But sweeter, yeah.
Yeah, and that orange, almost damn near amber profiles. on
Yeah.
it.
Yep. So
Yeah.
then the East Coast started getting into the juicy, hazy ones.
Yeah, and they started really, Heady Topper, they were adding huge amounts of hops as a dry hop addition, very late in the boil or, just in dry hop, and man, they were trying to maximize for aromas late in the beer.
Right, because your heat takes the oil and the aromas and the terpenes away.
Yeah, we literally boil them off.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, you need that for bitterness. Still, you need the oils for bitterness.
Well, they would start going. Some of those hazy ones, they would do no boil additions, just flame out and dry hop.
Right.
I remember doing an experiment to figure out how much hops do we have to use to get 100 IBUs in flame out? And we ran out of hops. So we cheated it a little bit. We did a first wort hopping of like 3/4 ounce, and then in 5 gallons it was a 3/4 ounce.
When you're throwing it in the mash tun.
Yeah, or right in the kettle as you're sparging.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a 3/4 ounce of Warrior, and that accounted for like 22 IBUs or something like that. And the rest of it was at flame out, and it was a pound of hops in 5 gallons to get the other 75 IBUs. That clogged up the filters, clogged up everything we had to try to separate those hops out.
And that's only going to be a perceptive IBU.
Right.
Because you're not going to get the bittering.
The
actual bitter units from it.
Yeah, I mean, bittering units is, we'll do a show on that, but bittering units are kind of, spoiler alert, they're a lie. It's a tool we can use to give us an idea about the bitterness, but everybody's perception of bitterness is completely unique.
To a degree, yes.
Yeah, the theoretical maximum for for detecting varying levels of hop bitterness is about 100 IBUs, but I think that's for like a super taster. I think the average human probably can't really is going to have a harder time differentiating between 65 and 85 IBUs even. Just on a normal beer drinking session. We're not super tasters. I know I'm not. I don't. Some of these guys have really advanced palates, and they usually get work because of their palate. I'm just a nerd with a beer.
Nerd with a beer.
But the other part of the IBU calculus, the determining that number, the math involved doesn't take into account the age of the hop or storage condition of those hops.
Yeah.
At all. It's not part of the matrix. And every time I go to a brewery tour, it's fairly evenly split between, if there's an open bag of hops, right? Because these are like 11-pound bags or 22-pound bags or 44s in a big place. They're not going to, sometimes they don't use them all in one batch. So when I look at these and I look in their hop storage room, I see all these bags rolled
Opened up. Yeah.
Yeah, rolled up. And it's fairly evenly split between brewers who just roll the bag shut in the freezer or those who tape the bag shut. The result is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It's exposed to oxygen. They're not storing them open very long, but
you'd have to vacuum pack them again.
But they don't.
Right.
I've never seen a production brewery vacuum pack their open bags. Ain't nobody got time for that. You are the one.
I did.
The one and only. The one and only.
Well, I had to store. I had a creative storage
scenario in the first place. Yeah.
So I had to vacuum pack. It's fine. My brewer just did it. He went out and got his own. He'd sit at the bar, vacuum pack the rest of them.
Yeah.
He'd scoop them out. Yep. Vacuum pack the rest.
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
Yeah. So the point I was trying to make is that the IBU calculation doesn't ask about storage condition, does not ask about the age of the hops or anything like that. So that number it has
been skewed,
an error ratio built right into it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still a starting point, ending point.
It gives us as a consumer an idea about what we're going to be drinking.
Right.
And that's useful.
So we've got black IPAs.
Sure.
We've got red IPAs. We've got white IPAs.
Love those.
Now, black IPA is what? An IPA that should taste like an IPA with your eyes closed, but it's dark.
Yeah.
When you look at it.
Yep.
With your eyes open.
Looks like a stout, drinks like an IPA.
Fakes you out.
Yeah.
And if it's done well, it is really super good.
Yeah, getting all of the color and none of like the roastiness.
Right. That's a trick.
Is the trick. And yeah, when you do it right, it's a lot of fun to drink.
Yeah.
Kind of a lot of them are classic, like Big C hop editions.
Yeah. You got rye IPA. Rye will add a nice spicy character to a normal IPA.
I see red and rye get combined a lot.
Throw a couple extra pounds of rye in your normal recipe and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's going to give a spicy character.
Taste the rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
White IPA, that one is fun. It's a wheat beer with IPA hops. 50-50
wheat
churro
beer,
and
more
wheat.
like a the Blue Moon.
Yeah, except
style
doesn't
wheat
have
wheat beer.
but with more hops. Yeah,
More hops.
take a Blue Moon base, no coriander
Moon
for
hoppy.
like no coriander or anything like that. Maybe a little orange peel.
Not the same yeast, right? Different
I
yeast?
use a Belgian yeast for
Yeah,
those ones.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
I go with white yeast 3944 for that.
Very
is a
okay.
Very tasty. My favorite thing about that beer is as soon as it's terminal gravity, it's time to package that beer.
And drink it.
And yeah, because
And drink
don't
it.
try to clear it. Don't try to, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You are just wasting drinking time. Right. So, pretty cool beer.
Well, it just it just depends on what kind of flavors you're after, and all kinds of beers can be turned into what we would say IPAs. If I don't have my beer judge hat on, yeah, turn any beer into an IPA, and it'll be great.
Just drink what you like. I'm going to get a little beer snobby from time to time, but at the same time, I drink West Coast IPAs and I drink East Coast IPAs and white IPAs and red IPAs and black IPAs and hazies and juices. They're enjoyable products.
Yep.
I do get down with them, even if I, tend to turn my nose up on them.
right.
They're still darn delicious.
They are. So go out, enjoy your IPAs, and have one on us.
Yeah. Not literally on us because we don't have the budget for that.
All right,
but,
with us.
You can think about us when you're drinking them.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back. We'll be back wrapping up the show, talking a little bit more about IPA.
All right.
I have a little bit of additional
You got something for the break?
commentary to add to this whole conversation,
Awesome.
which should be fun. Should be a little fun.
We're going
So,
to take a little break. We'll be right
Yeah.
back, folks.
All right.
In the craft beer system, the people are served by two but equally important groups: the brewers who make the beer and the bartenders who serve the pints. These are their stories, presented by Northwest Brewers Supply. You're handed a dusty bottle by a brewer with a tale as unique as the brew it holds. You never knew the challenges one man could face packaging his creation on a tailgate of a well-used Mazda pickup. Then you realize what awaits you at the bottom of the bottle is the essence of a man's journey. All started at Northwest Brewers Supply.
We are in the closing moments of this week's episode, all about IPAs.
IPAs.
Yeah, been fun so far. We
Yeah.
got to drink a couple of tasty beers.
We did drink two tasty
air our
beers.
grievances on certain
Run High School
stylistic and stylistic
Yep,
choices.
went through a little history.
Yeah. That was fun. You mentioned you had something extra.
So
there.
yeah, so I want to talk about one little thing that has always crossed my mind. This is more of a personal thing for me, and something that I've always thought about since I've heard the story of IPA and I've drank IPAs. So the story goes, they were brewing the beer to send on the trade routes, and the beer wasn't making it all the way 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and being drinkable. So they started putting the hops and the higher alcohol in the barrels to send on the trade route. So then this IPA would now be in the barrel for 3 to 5 months, sometimes 8. Now, when I drink my IPA and it's fresh, it's super good and nice. If I was to put this IPA in a barrel and shake it for 8 months and bring it out on the other side, what would that taste like, really?
Yeah, I can't imagine it was a premium example.
So it's not what you would go buy in the store. What the actual recipients on the other side of the trade route would get is not. It would be my old IPA bottles that I left in the fridge, and then I left them in the garage.
Yeah, they'd be some of those alpha acids would be breaking down. They may not
Yep.
even be as bitter anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The trouble with oxygen, you're going to have gas exchange in a barrel.
Yep.
So you're going to have some oxidation, which is going to, the bright shiny flavors of of those hops are going to degrade.
Right.
If you're a home brewer and you're wondering why your IPA, turns south every 2 weeks, in the keg, it's oxygen.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine those beers
turning out like what we buy in the store.
Right.
On that
I think
end.
the availability was kind of the thing.
yeah.
Like,
That was all
there's
you
a
can
beer
get,
from home.
And that's even better.
Right.
Because
the colony
other,
over there is full of English people living in India.
And if they were to send pale ale, it would just be horrid.
Yeah. But the bitterness factor on those beers, like bitter beers were a thing in England before the IPA. Right. They'd been
Bitters.
experimenting with, very bitter beers. I think kind of those English traditions, the English tradition beers are definitely a little more hop focused than, say, the malt focus of their German counterparts, or the yeast focused Belgians of the time. So a hoppy beer was a thing we did before we called it an IPA.
Right.
Yeah.
Bitters.
I remember drinking Heady Topper. I drank Bell's Two Hearted Ale and Pliny the Elder in a single sitting. It was kind of like, there was also like a Sierra Nevada Pale and a Founder's Breakfast Stout. And it was like the top 5 selling beers in America chosen by Homebrew. And we got to taste that lineup. And of course, 3 of them were IPAs, which tracks with this 40% market dominance.
There you go.
And they were, they were good. I enjoyed the hell out of them. I hadn't had Bell's Two Hearted for a long time. Another beer that was not available in Washington for a long time. Alchemist. It was the first time I ever got to have an Alchemist. I was very excited about that. But I got home and I was still thirsty, and I had a 6-pack of Bodhisattva. It was more like a 4-pack of Bodhisattva because I drank the other 2. But I cracked one of those when I got home, fresh off the Heady Topper, Bell's Two Hearted, and Pliny Kick. And man, I like Bodhisattva better.
Whoa.
Yeah, Bodhisattva out of Georgetown is kind of
Brewery.
That's kind of my go-to.
Downtown
IPA.
Seattle.
And it's got a little cloud to it.
Bodhi.
But they don't call they don't call that one a hazy either.
Bodhi. They don't. They just call it an IPA.
Yeah.
And it's a hazy. It's a hazy. It's super good. Oh, yeah. That's my go-to when I go to a bar usually.
Yeah, if that's on tap, I'm going to get that.
Bodhisattva.
Yeah, I like that beer.
Shout out to Georgetown.
Yeah. One of our sponsors, Georgetown.
Oh, yeah. We could use a sponsor.
Yeah, we could use one. I think that's gonna wrap things up for today. We've got you're making hand signals, and it's all Portuguese to me.
Portuguese. we got time to wrap this up.
Yeah. I haven't I haven't got as far as next week's episode.
Well, they don't need to know that.
Well, it was going to be a plug.
Okay,
it was going to be a plug. If you have burning questions about beer and brewing, jump on the Facebook channel for Northwest Brewers Supply, and I've got some content up there. I've got a little form you can fill out, and ask your questions. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to be able to answer those on air.
Yep.
Bring you guys into the conversation.
Give you a shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. Make you famous.
Ask us a recipe. We'll design a recipe for you.
We'll do dang near anything beer related. I'll wear a beer hat if you want me to. Oh man, do you have one of those? The helmet with the 2 cans and the straws?
I don't.
Darn it.
We can make them.
We sure can.
We can make them. I have a hard hat. I have a hard hat.
So yeah, that's so if you got questions, get on the Facebook and ask away. We'll be happy to do that. I think that's gonna about wrap things up for this week
on a nice Wednesday.
Been a lot of fun, folks. Hope you enjoy it. And
fun.
We'll be back next week with another exciting topic.
Right
here on the Beercraft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Ben, signing out.
I'm Andrew.
We'll see you next time
on the Beercraft.